Have you ever noticed how things seem to always get worse before they get better? Well, today's story time with a little lesson nugget in there too. You see, I nearly quit my YouTube channel 1 month before it went viral. Now my channel reaches over 1.8 million views a month, and hopefully it helps those people too. But it took me a long time to get traction, and I nearly gave up right before I was able to succeed. So here's the short version of why I started a YouTube channel and what I've learned about not quitting too soon. I started working in the field of mental health at a tiny little juvenile correction center in St. Anthony, Idaho in 2004. It was part of a mini internship for my major. And for some crazy reason, maybe my passion for suffering in the outdoors with stinky people, I decided to work in a wilderness treatment program for troubled youth. And again, somehow, between going 8 days without a shower every shift and hiking around in the desert with a bunch of punk kids who I loved, and seeing their growth and sitting around a fire talking about life, I got hooked. Being part of growth and change and healing and exploring life and emotions and relationships seemed like the most exciting thing possible. I loved it. I picked up extra shifts and I read as much as I could about psychology and spirituality and inspiring stories. And eventually I got my therapy degree and I worked full-time in a treatment center. But then I had my first little baby, and I knew that I wanted to put her first and primarily be a mom. So I quit my job and I spent most of my days hanging out with my sweet little poopy gremlin. But people kept asking for therapy, and even though I was practicing a couple hours a week, I still really missed it, and I would think about therapy all the time. So in 2016, I started to think about how I could really help a lot more people on YouTube with the education side of therapy than I could in expensive therapy sessions. So I dreamed up this idea of building a series of mental health educational videos to supplement my clients' time in therapy. So I planned out and I wrote my first YouTube video. It took me over an hour to film a 5-minute video because I had to do so many retakes and I didn't know how to look at a camera while I was talking. And then my husband showed me how to edit in a simple editor, and about 10 short hours later, I finished my very first video. So over the course of the next 3 years, I kept making videos. I wrote when the babies napped. I'd take a laptop to the McDonald's play place, and I'd write while the kids played. I'd get up at 5 a.m. and I'd film a video while the kids slept, and then I'd sneak in some editing at night after they went to bed. And I published my videos when I could. I'd made about 50 of them, but they really weren't getting much traction. Now in 2019, I learned about SEO, which is actually really important. And I kept learning how to make my channel better. But at this point, we had 3 kids, which means it's like a solar eclipse if you get to sleep through the night. And nap time was gone. So for me to film, we'd have to set up the spare bedroom on a weekend and hire a babysitter, and it was just getting more and more complicated. And the channel was starting to see some traffic, like 20 to 30,000 views a month, but this was only bringing in about $40 a month. So then came December of 2019. It was probably the most difficult month of my life. Each of the kids rotated through various colds and ear infections. An ear infection means that your kids start crying as soon as they try to go to sleep, and then they wake you up every 15 to 30 minutes throughout the night. I think that month our 3 kids had a total of 8 ear infections, and we were so sleep deprived that we couldn't even function. And then my husband broke his hand and he couldn't work, and then I got this terrible case of mastitis, and it was just this long series of injuries and illnesses and sleep deprivation that basically just made everything super hard. At that point, in January of 2020, the channel reached 10,000 subscribers. And that was exciting for me. That seemed like a lot of people, but we just couldn't find the time to film and edit videos. I had a ton of scripts written, but we just couldn't produce them. Our little family was too stressed out. So something had to give. We couldn't do everything we wanted to do. So I talked to Ryan about me quitting the channel, and I thought really hard about it, and I was about ready to be done with it. As part of being a mom, you get used to giving up on a lot of things. For example, I used to go on a lot of outdoor trips, and I'd already accepted that I just couldn't do things like that until my kids were a little older. So you get used to sacrificing the things you care about, and I figured that it might be time to let go of the YouTube channel too. But then one night I prayed about it, and I got this strong but quiet feeling to just keep going a little bit longer. So I kept trying. We used a weekend to film a couple of videos, and then the next month something crazy happened. It was February of 2020, and YouTube started recommending 2 of my videos at once. And that month we got 1 million views on the channel. So this is about 50 times our usual traffic. And all of a sudden, the work seemed worth it. To be able to help that many people all at once, that was worth working for. So we got about 50,000 subscribers that month, and every month since then, we've just kept growing. So now YouTube is both Ryan and my primary jobs. I still do therapy as a hobby. I love it. And I think that YouTube, that it's the coolest thing to be able to make videos that help people all around the world. So that's the story of how I nearly quit right before we were able to succeed. And I've noticed this pattern other times in my life, where right before a big breakthrough, things get extra hard for a while, and all you can do is say, I'm gonna just keep going for a little bit longer. I don't know if it's worth it or if it's a waste of energy, but I'm gonna keep trying. I mean, another time when I saw this was when I was finally making a long dreamed of visit to Chaco Canyon. We had driven 11 hours to get there. We were in the RV, and the road was so rough that things were like breaking in the vehicle, like things were falling off and screws were wiggling loose. And it seemed like we had no choice but to turn around just a few miles from our goal. So I stopped the RV, I was getting it ready to turn around, and I paused and I just kind of rested my head on the steering wheel, and I just sat there trying to figure out what to do. And in that moment, I decided to just drive 100 meters more. So I started the RV up, and I slowly traveled that short distance. And as I came around the bend, what did my weary eyes behold? The National Park Service sign, and just beyond that, a paved road. We had almost turned around 100 yards from success. And we made it. So that day we got to see incredible ancient buildings and ancient artifacts from the Puebloan culture of 1,000 years ago. It was awesome. So I've seen this pattern happen in these key moments in my life. It's when you push through those dark times that the greatest blessing shows itself in your life. I really believe that these difficulties ask you to level up, or to learn something new, or to just hold on to your original belief that this is worth it. So, what do you think? Have you seen this in your life? Do things get harder right before a breakthrough? How do you hold on when things get tough? Tell me about it in the comments. I'd love to hear your story, and thank you for listening to mine.